Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopijana Vallabha Giribharadhari Yasodhanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Gopijana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopijana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopijana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopijana Vallabha Giribharadhari Yashodhanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodhanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Bhanachari Jamunatira Bhanachari Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Shri Radhe Jaya Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari Jaya Panchatattva Jaya Panchatattva Jaya Panchatattva Jaya Panchatattva Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Tora Tata Satashi Shrimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Anantako Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Kantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shishi Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna, good morning, and welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam class on Wednesday. It's from the 7th chapter of the first canto, The Son of Drona Punished. Continuing on the story. So I'll read out the Sanskrit. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sa Esha Bhagavan Drona Praja Rupena Vartate Tasyatmano Ridham Tasyatmano Ridham Patnyaste Nanvagad Virasukripi Sa Esha Bhagavan Drona Praja Rupena Vartate Tasyatmanordam Patnyaste Nanvagad Virasukripi Sa Esha Bhagavan Drona Prajarupena Vartate Tasyatmanordam Patnyaste Nanvagad Virasukripi Sa He Esha Certainly Bhagavan Lord Drona Dronacharya Prajarupena in the form of his son Ashvatam. Vartate is existing. Tasya, his, Atmana, of the body, Ardham, half, Patni, wife, Aste, living, Na, not, Anvagat, undertook, Virasu, having the son present, Kripi, the sister of Kripacharya. And the translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. He, Dronacharya, is certainly still existing, being represented by his son. His wife Kripi did not undergo a sati with him because she had a son. Purport. The wife of Dronacharya, Kripi, is the sister of Kripacharya, a devoted wife who is, according to revealed scripture, the better half of her husband, is justified in embracing voluntary death along with her husband if she is without issue. But in the case of the wife of Dronacharya, she did not undergo such a trial because she had her son, the representative of her husband. A widow is a widow in name only if there is a son of her husband existing. So in either case, Ashvatam was the representative of Dronacharya, and therefore killing Ashvatam would be like killing Dronacharya. That was the argument of Draupadi against the killing of Ashvatam. So I'll just read that last part again. So in either case, Ashvatam was the representative of Dronacharya, and therefore killing Ashvatam would be like killing Dronacharya. This was the argument of Draupadi against the killing of Ashvatam. Amagina timirandasya jana jana shalakana chakshun militam nina tasmai shri gurave namaha. Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mayam Dadati Svapadantikam Nam Om Vishnubadai Krishna Bastai Vadashi Mani Svatasam Swami Tinamani Nam Om Vishnubadai Krishna Bastai Vadashi Mani Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Bacharini Nirvishesha Shanivani Bhastita Deshatari. So I was thinking that perhaps this class would have been better to be given by a woman, because in the purport it says that the wife is the better half in the relationship. So that would have been a good verse for a lady to talk on, to explain that in more detail. But what I've done, I've taken that section about, because it's talking about sati, which is quite a powerful activity, and Prabhupada says in a purport later on in the section of Prachinabarhishat, King Prachinabarhishat, about King Puranjana, when Puranjana becomes a woman in his next life, and then she becomes Vaidarbhi, and what she does is she serves her husband really amazingly. Her husband, of course, is an absolute pure devotee. Oh my God, I'm trying to think of his name. It's Madhava. It's like that. I can't remember the exact name now, but he dies. They go off, and they're in the forest. He quits his kingdom, goes off and stays in the forest, and then she is serving him, even though it's in the Vanaprastha stage. She's completely disheveled. She was the most beautiful wife of the king, amazing ornamentation, dressed beautifully. But when they go to the Vanaprastha, she doesn't comb her hair. She just completely is there in the forest, and she's serving this great pure devotee. And eventually she's massaging his feet, and then she sees that his feet are cold, and then she realizes that he's left the body, and so she laments And so she starts to get ready the pyre in which she's going to leave with him. But then a Brahmin comes, who is the representative of the super soul, and the Brahmin then starts to explain about Krishna and about the duty, and how actually, as she has forgotten her previous life as Puranjana, but that he's actually the super soul, so he's coming to actually to bring her, to give her knowledge, to go back to the spiritual world. So it's an incredible allegory, and it was spoken by Narada to King Prachinabarhishat, because he's trying to explain to him. King Prachinabarhishat has become overly attached to his kingly duties. In fact, he's become very harsh in that he's killing so many animals as well. So Narada is trying to explain to him what happens to somebody who is in that situation, in order to try to get him to realize his actual position in the material world, so that he can perform his spiritual duties. While I was reading some of those sections, and we see that Prabhupada is interweaving many amazing purports into these stories, whether it's the story with King Prachinabarhishat, whether it's the story with Narada giving the allegory, whether it is in this particular story with Dronacharya, the son of Drona punished. All throughout we have the benefit of Srila Prabhupada's purports, and I wanted to actually read a little bit from some of those purports, because it's a particular thing that's kind of attracting me at the moment, is where Prabhupada talks about the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement, because I think he's probably the best person to ask about what the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement is. And lest we forget it, lest we kind of just go off on our own tangents, it's very important to hear from Prabhupada himself what it is that he wanted. Now, he varies it a lot. There's so many things he wanted for the Hare Krishna movement, and there's some things which he stressed more than others. But I thought, anyway, I would read a few of those, because it's so important to keep reminding ourselves of what Prabhupada is saying. So I'll just take one section here. It's in 428, in the fourth canto, 28 chapter, verse number 10. Because the living entity does not hope to enter the spiritual kingdom of eternal life, bliss and knowledge, he wants to stick to his present body, even though it may be useless. Consequently, and there it is, the greatest welfare activity in this material world is the furthering of the Krishna consciousness movement. Greatest welfare activity. This movement is giving human society information about the kingdom of God. That's the next, the duty that we have. There is God, there is Krishna, and everyone can return to God and live eternally in bliss and knowledge. So that is what we're meant to be doing. That is an amazing, clear direction of what we're meant to be doing. Here is another part the Prabhupada talks. The main purpose of this is 4:28-27. The main purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement is to enlighten the forgetful living entity and remind him of his original Krishna consciousness. In this way, the living entity can be saved from the catastrophe of ignorance, as well as bodily transmigration. So those two words, the catastrophe of ignorance and as well as bodily transmigration. So I think you could take that to mean as well the catastrophe of the transmigration, because Prabhupada has said that on many occasions, how we're trying to stop this transmigration. this is what we're trying to do to people. So what to speak of, we're trying to explain to people about transmigration, which they don't accept in general. So we have our work cut out. But yeah, Prabhupada is he took on the whole material world basically, and wanted to infuse and to bring this information to humanity at large, specifically the people in the Western countries. But then we see he went back to India, and then he started an absolute, incredible wave of Krishna consciousness there. But this whole point about the catastrophe of ignorance and the bodily transmigration, we're part of that. We are the people that Prabhupada has come to save. We have lodged ourselves in ignorance because of our wanting to enjoy separately from Krishna. So we have a lot of remnants of that. Like we came to the Krishna consciousness movement originally to try to purify ourselves from an artist. Sometimes we didn't even know why we came. We just came because it looked like we were getting some relief from the hellish material existence. So we heard what Prabhupada was saying, and we got some great relief by taking to Krishna consciousness. And it's not something which happens overnight, We have a great experience of that, just being around the Krishna consciousness movement for quite a while. We can see how things actually change. I'd like to make just a reference, of course, to His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, because he came to Ireland in about 1988, and at that time he brought with him a whole new wave of Krishna consciousness, because he was entering into a scene in which there was a lot of, although there was some great successes and some good Krishna consciousness, but there was also a lot of turbulence, disagreement among the devotees, criticism. The first offense in chanting, which we say every morning, is in order to blaspheme. One of the offenses to blaspheme devotees who've dedicated their lives to the propagation of the holy name. So His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj was the personification of that, and he brought with him a whole new wave of how to tackle that problem, because that was something that we brought with us from the material world. That was been my experience. I brought this wave of, or this criticism, and we were so successful on one level, but then we were wondering why we were having problems, why we were having difficulties. So I had a conversation recently with His Grace Tulsi Priya Prabhu, and we were talking a little bit about that point, and how sometimes those anarthas take a while to go away, even collectively, even in a movement, in the Krishna consciousness movement, it's kind of like it's in a growing stage. So initially there were some difficulties there, and so, as I said, there were some amazing things, but there was also some difficulties, and it took us a while to work through those things. And one of the reasons, actually, when I came to the Krishna consciousness movement was I was in anxiety. I did not understand that I was in anxiety, but it was explained to me in the very first lecture that I went to how Krishna consciousness can relieve us from anxiety. And I immediately understood, that's the problem. I've been in anxiety all this time, and this Krishna consciousness is giving me a relief from this anxiety. Vaikuntha means, where there is no anxiety, and but where there is actual peace and harmony in society. So that was what we were giving. But suddenly in the Krishna conscious movement, after a while, I understood, why is this strife around me? Why is this happening? And then I understood as well that that anxiety means we're worried about the future. This was the discussion I was having with Tulsi Prabhu, and he made some really, really good points on this. I won't be able to reproduce them here, but what I took from it is that is that that this tendency to try to control things. This is the original problem. We're trying to enjoy in this material world, so we're surrounded. Everyone's trying to enjoy. Now, even when you come to a spiritual movement, you want to enjoy pratishta, fame, or whatever, or to try to be the center. We're still trying to be the center. Even though we're saying Krishna, Krishna, Krishna's in the center, really, we're trying to be in the center. So therefore, there's going to be friction. It's going to happen, you know. And so therefore, it takes a while to let that run through the system, to try to get that out so that we can understand what is our actual identity. You know, if I'm not this false ego trying to be the center of, you know, of attention, or the center of the world, then what is that position? It said that until you're about 4 years old, 4 or 5, you think that you're the center of the world, you know, and that's actually, you know, that's the way to bring up children. Just between 0 and 5, you could, you know, oh yeah, you're this, you know, to encourage them amazingly. But then eventually they start to change. But then that's when the training comes in between 5 and 10, and then 10 to 15, even more stern training, and then 15 to 20, you ease off, and then the person starts to function really well in the world. So these stages are there, but because of our upbringing and our background, we never got beyond the 0 to 5. Really, we still want to be the center. Why we came to this world, and then we take these wonderful qualities with us into the Krishna consciousness movement. So then it's no wonder then that the Krishna consciousness movement will find that there is some difficulties, because we're still trying to enact those inartas. But the whole wave, as I said, was Maharaj was bringing this whole of wave of trying to understand that we're not the body. We're trying how to act on this platform, how to behave like ladies and gentlemen, you know, how to understand that we may be going through an artist, but still we have this empathy and this sympathy, and we have this love for one another. How we understand that Krishna is the source of everything, and that Krishna is in everybody, in everybody's heart, and is directing the wanderings of all the living entities, and is directing the devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement. So eventually we mature a little bit, and then we start to serve the other devotees, and then we stop being envious of the other devotees, because by the natural way of things, some devotees are inverted commas more advanced, or even more advanced than we are. Oh dear, oh hell. No, that's actually a good thing, because then they can help us in our Krishna consciousness. So then we start to understand their nirmatsaranam satam, how this non-enviousness is there. And then we start to hear Krishna. And then we find that in the Bhagavad Gita, there's so many instances where Krishna is trying to bring us to this platform, that we're not the controller, we're not, so how does he do that? And I just thought I would quote quite a few verses from Bhagavad Gita, because Bhagavad Gita is full of this. And so we start to learn how to act in Krishna consciousness. So I was just taking initially from the 4th chapter, verses 20 to 22. We get an understanding of what Krishna wants us to, how he wants us to act, how he wants us to think, how he wants us to live in this world, because this is the truth of who we are and how we're acting in this world. And this is so vitally important, because if we don't know why we're here, if we don't know who we are, if we don't know how to act in this world, then how are we ever going to get to the spiritual world? So Krishna is giving us clear instructions. So I'll read out. Abandoning all attachment to the results of activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled although performing actions. So at the start of that, then you can see there is a certain way of acting in this world, and there's a certain consciousness that we have to be on in which to act properly. So Krishna is giving us clarity of what that state of consciousness is. So then in chapter 5, text number 20, again Krishna gives this instruction. A person who is neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant, nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is already situated in transcendence. So the material world is, it's constantly, we've got happiness and distress, fame or infamy, honor or dishonor. So the tendency is for us to look for honor, to look for happiness, to look to be famous. So we strive for those things where we're constantly on the lookout, where we can be famous, where somebody can see us as being a great person. We're looking for wealth. Oh yeah, that's great. I'm happy. I'm wealthy now. There's, but what if we get distressed? What are we meant to do then? So Krishna is explaining to us that in all those situations, it's not us. It's actually not us. So therefore, in the world, don't be affected by those things. So this is a very high stage that Krishna is looking for. He wants us to achieve a very amazing state. So all the advertising in the world, all the material pull to do this, to do that, to go here, to go there, to be this, to be that. Krishna is telling us, forget it all. It's of no use to us. It's just getting entangled in the material world, stuck in ignorance, and then we're going to get more bodies one after another. In verse 23, he says, before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and happy in this world. So Krishna is really putting it on us here to learn how to live in this world, to recognize this world for what it is. It is a temporary illusion. It's Maya. We're embodied, and these things come. There's the ocean, there's desires coming in all the time, but a person who is not affected by that, then he is the true yogi in that sense. So we can recognize while we're in the body, in the city of the body, these things are going on, but we're not to be moved one way or the other. So this is Krishna's instruction. Then in the 12th chapter in devotional service, Krishna gives us more instruction. And actually the whole of from 13 and 14 to the end, Krishna gives the instruction of how we should act, how we can please him, how he will be pleased, how we act. 12 and 13. One who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think of himself as a proprietor and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me. Such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. And then the following verses go on and explain that further and further. And in the last section I wanted to get to. It's in the 14th chapter. And I thought this was very, very telling, especially the first couple of lines. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pandu, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present, or long for them when they disappear, who is unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active, who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal toward the desirable and the undesirable, who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature. So even among the devotees, sometimes somebody might do something, and even somebody who's a little bit off does something. There is a tendency sometimes to get stuck into that person. Someone did something pretty off, disgusting, in my opinion, who's been kind of coming around to the movement a little bit from time to time. And I saw it, and I actually, it was a comment basically, and I just completely, removed the comment basically. And then I had an opportunity then to get stuck into that person with a few other people, and I knew I'd get, oh my God, what did they do? Oh, they did this, But then I thought, well, what's the use of that, I'm saying it now, but I said, what's the use of it? How am I going to benefit? I'm going to feel, I'm great because I see that person in that light, so therefore, and not only that, but I encourage somebody else to do it then as well and get them into that situation, which is, So in other words, I'm just going to disturb the equilibrium and of somebody else. Someone else is practicing Krishna consciousness, trying to practice Krishna consciousness, and just getting them to feel in a certain way and to feel. So we have to be very careful in this, in how we're approaching things, because Krishna wants us to be neutral. They're going to happen. Somebody's going to do something mad, and we're going to do something mad ourselves. But we somehow or other have to remain, or we're trying to meditate in a certain way on Krishna consciousness, meditate nicely, and then we kind of get off on the false ego, start doing something and then we have to, oh my God, I'm stuck in this false ego. What am I going to do? How am I going to get back? And I've committed an offense. I've offended this devotee. I've said something negative about this person. How ever am I going to get back? And then we have to pray, and we have to realize our mistake, and we have to also maybe not beat ourselves around too much, and we have to kind of see it in perspective, and then we have to realize, well, I'm not on the pure platform, so therefore I have to tolerate myself and get back into reading about Krishna. The first part of this 14:22 to 25 I thought was really good, was the one who hates illumination, attachment, and delusion. That's good mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance when they are present, or long for them when they disappear. I personally have a very good method, because of my occupation, of dealing with this, because the occupation is that we don't bring in Lakshmi every day. There's lots of times when there's no Lakshmi, and then suddenly we get a whole big hunk of it because we've been working on something for a long time, and then eventually someone rings up, okay, I will take this, and a hunk of Lakshmi comes in. Then there's another drought for a while. So there is a tendency then to that feeling when the Lakshmi comes in. I have to actually control that feeling, because sometimes you can get the feeling that oh great, here we are again. Yippee, good times are here again. And so I have to control that. And then when it's not there, I also have to control it by wishing for it to be there, because that's kind of your business is a little bit involved in that. But actually, if you can perform the activity as though neutral, like give it your best shot, everything, do it all according to his service to Krishna. But the result ultimately depends on Krishna. So it's a good practice for me. I just wanted to mention that. I wanted to actually to return again to the that section, which is from, we're talking in this verse about when Draupadi doesn't want to punish Kripi, because she would be doing that if Ashwatthama is killed, and then there's this whole reason that she didn't take Sati because her son was there, but a lot of these I think I've probably put in the purport is something that it's very highly elevated. Someone who would want to do this, but in this section in the Bhagavatam, when Narada is explaining to King Prachinabarshad about Puranjana, Puranjana becomes a woman in his next life, and then he actually, or she has the great fortune actually to become the servant of this great devotee, Malayadvaja. Yeah, that's his name. Yeah, I got the name. But he leaves his body, and then she's thinking about the sati rite. But there's some brilliant purports that just happen around this point, and it's to do with the spiritual master. And I thought it would be nice to share those actually, particularly 428. I have this section here. And it's also to do with Prabhupada talking about the Krishna consciousness movement, but and this is about the how the whole parampara system, evam parampara praptam amrajarshya vida, sakalanena mahata yoga bhajta. Sorry, I'm just getting that wrong here. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vishvate Yogam Praktavanaham Avyam Vivashvan Manave Praha Manur Ikshvaka Bhavit. The Blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivashvan, and Vivashvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. And Prabhupada says, Vivashvan, the sun god, imparted Bhagavad Gita to one Manu, and this Manu imparted it to his son, and imparted it to yet another Manu. In this way, the propagation of the Krishna consciousness is never stopped. No one should think that this Krishna consciousness movement is a new movement. As confirmed by Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, it is a very, very old movement, for it has been passing down from one Manu to another. And then there's a very interesting section. So this whole parampara system is going on. So just like the sati, the actual whole idea of serving the spiritual master and the man and the woman, and but Prabhupada is using this in a greater way to explain how we're so dependent on the parampara system, and we're dependent on the spiritual guide. Prabhupada goes in to explain this, very interesting, a whole section in Bhagavatam. Among Vaishnavas, there may be some difference of opinion due to everyone's personal identity. But despite all personal differences, the cult of Krishna consciousness must go on. We can see that under the instruction of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj began preaching the Krishna consciousness movement in an organized way within the past 100 years. The disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj are all God brothers, and although there are some differences of opinion, and although we are not acting conjointly, Every one of us is spreading this Krishna consciousness movement according to his own capacity and producing many disciples to spread it all over the world. As far as we are concerned, we have already started the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and many thousands of Europeans and Americans have joined this movement. Indeed, it is spreading like wildfire. The cult of Krishna consciousness, based on the 9 principles of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasim, Sakyam, Atma Nivedam, will never be stopped. It will go on without distinction of caste, creed, colour, or country. No one can check it. The reason I'm using these purports and this analogy, because, you know, Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj has been the epitome of this parampara system and of following Srila Prabhupada. He is the personification of the Prabhupada's most important instructions, that your love for me will be shown by how much you keep this movement together once I have left. Because that has been the soul of his life. And, you know, I have a personal experience of this when he came and tried to unite the difficulties that were going on in the Yatra at the time, and preached very much the Krishna consciousness etiquette, culture, and ways in which a devotee behaves. Not just we're throwing the philosophy at one another and beating each other with shlokas and so on like that. No, it's there's a whole culture behind it, and Maharaj was so instrumental in bringing that in throughout all of ISKCON, and so this is how we should behave. This is how we should follow the spiritual master, and Prabhu's. It gets even better because this is explained even further when. Let me just explain it. This is Vaidarbi. She's saying to her husband, she's just discovered that the body is, as he's left the body. But she says basically, "O best of the kings, please get up, get up. Just see, this world is surrounded by water and infested with rogues and so-called kings. This world is very much afraid, and it is your duty to protect her." So she's and Prabhupada in the purport says, religion means abiding by the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Religious principles begin from the time one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now here Prabhupada says, it is the Acharya's duty to spread a bona fide religious system and induce everyone to bow down before the Supreme Lord. One who executes the religious principles by rendering devotional service, specifically the 9 items like hearing, chanting, and remembering. Unfortunately, when the Acharya disappears, rogues and non-devotees take advantage and immediately begin to introduce unauthorized principles in the name of so-called swamis, yogis, philanthropists, welfare workers, and so on. And here Prabhupada says, actually, human life is meant for executing the orders of the Supreme Lord, and this is stated in Bhagavad Gita 9:34, the famous verse, Man manam avamad bhakto, engage your mind always and think of me and become my devotees. The main business of human society is to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead at all times, and to become his devotees and to worship the Supreme Lord and bow down before him. The Acharya, the authorized representative of the Supreme Lord, establishes these principles. But when he disappears, things once again become disordered. The perfect disciples of the Acharyas try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of the spiritual master. At the present moment, practically the entire world is afraid of rogues and non-devotees. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement is started to save the world from irreligious principles. everyone should cooperate with this movement in order to bring about the actual peace and happiness in the world. So Prabhupada's mission is not small. He wants to bring peace and happiness in this world. And we do that by following the instructions of the Acharya. And His Holiness Bhakti Chiru Maharaj, as I said, was the epitome of putting Prabhupada's instructions into action. Almost single-handedly, he held the Krishna consciousness movement, ISKCON, together, despite so many possibilities of deviations, of going this direction, that direction, this direction, that direction. Even when he was here on the planet, there was a whole disturbance about taking shelter of the Gaudiya Math and so on. And Bhakti Chiru Maharaj personally had great relationships with the Gaudiya Math. And I remember him saying one time to me that the devotees were not understanding. I think he was talking about this great devotee, Sridhar Maharaj, Prabhupada's godbrother, and who he went and talked to. And we were misunderstanding what he was saying. He was a great devotee. So we had two things going on there. Maharaj was, no, he would not, he had such great respect for these elevated Vaishnavas, and yet he had a complete and utter devotion to Srila Prabhupada. He didn't see, he saw those two things as synonymous. So I remember at the time getting a real aha moment when he was explaining this, and in his heart was being very totally understanding, the whole culture of how we behave and how we interpret. Subsequently, the GBC issued an apology to actually how they maybe 7, 8, 10 years later, of how they misunderstood this great devotee, Srila Prabhupada's godbrother, how they misunderstood in what he was saying at the time. And but I remember at the time, Bhakti Chiru Maharaj explaining this. I was fortunate at the time to be the recipient of that knowledge. And as I said, it gets better. Prabhupada is explaining here in these purports. This is the last one actually. Sorry, I've gone on a bit. 47. She then prepared a blazing fire and firewood and placed the dead body of her husband upon it. When this was finished, she lamented severely and prepared herself to perish in the fire with her husband. Prabhupada then goes on to explain in this verse about the whole sati ritual and how it was understood at that time. But this is one that we should take a little bit carefully. But Prabhupada really explains the importance of continuing the parampara, of being a proper devotee in parampara, of taking the words of the spiritual master and broadcasting them throughout the world. He says, this indicates that a devotee's wife must be prepared to act in such a way. Similarly, a devoted disciple of the spiritual master would rather die with the spiritual master than fail to execute the spiritual master's mission. So, Prabhu's, it's too late. We're in the mission, We have to execute it. Now, take the instruction seriously. We're not maybe... Prabhupada is making a point here. He's not saying that, okay, if you don't do it, just commit suicide. He's not making that point. We have to have that intensity of following it. We all know Prabhupada is that's the epitome. That's Prabhupada following the orders of his spiritual master. 241 Vyavasyatmaka Buddhir Ikeho Kuranandana. This is what Prabhupada is giving to us, and this is, as I said, as Bhakti Chiru Maharaj exemplified. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes down upon this earth to re-establish the principles of religion, so his representative, the spiritual master, also comes to re-establish religious principles. It is the duty of the disciples to take charge of the mission of the spiritual master and execute it properly. Otherwise, the disciple should decide to die along with the spiritual master. In other words, to execute the will of the spiritual master, the disciple should be prepared to lay down his life and abandon all personal considerations. So that's Prabhupada is qualifying exactly what he means there. It means that we shouldn't act out of our personal sense gratification, but we should act to please the spiritual master, and we should make it the goal of our life. There's another section which I didn't mark, yeah, here it is, actually, thankfully. And I'll just go into the middle of the purport, and I'll conclude here, because it's just the way it's put so amazingly about the Vani of the spiritual master and the Vapu. He says, nonetheless, if one sticks to the principles enunciated by the spiritual master, somehow or other, he is in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since the Lord is in the heart, he can advise a sincere disciple from within. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10.10. Tesham satata yuktanam. In conclusion, if a disciple is very serious to execute the mission of the spiritual master, he immediately associates with the spiritual master by Vani or Vapu. This is the only secret of success in seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead of being eager to see the Lord in some bush in Vrindavan, while at the same time engaging in sense gratification, if one sticks to the principle of following the words of the spiritual master, he will see the Supreme Lord without difficulty. Isn't that incredible? So this whole thing, Prabhupada has turned this whole sati thing round into saying that by taking this whole purport and this whole section of the Bhagavatam, and Krishna comes as a super soul in the form of a Brahman. You know, the Brahman comes at the end to Vaidarbhi and starts to instruct her and explain to her who she really is. And so this is how we serve the spiritual master, by serving his words. And there's so many amazing things there about serving the mission of the Guru. That's where we will get. That's where we will meet Krishna, and where we will meet the Guru as well. So many other things that we could say about this, but the whole question of Prabhupada has turned this whole kind of sati right, although it has been a reality. He says that he gives an example of it happening even in 1936. But what it really means is that the disciple, he sacrifices his life by giving up his own personal consideration, in other words, his so-called sense gratification, and just to dedicate his life to the words of the spiritual master and fulfilling the mission of the spiritual master to whatever degree one can. Okay, I'll stop there. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that it got around to you know, it was using the purpose, seeing what's in the purport, and seeing it from a few different angles of vision. I'm sure it could have been taken from many different angles, but thank you very much for listening. Was there any comments, Shani?
Yeah, there's one comment by Gunnar and a question by Shurupa.
Okay.
Gunnar says, saving the lost souls from the catastrophe of ignorance and bodily transmigration. My main takeaway thoughts from your class today. Thank you, Prabhu.
Oh, that's really nice, Gunnar. That's taking from the class, because that's a really good, saving the souls from the catastrophe of ignorance. Yeah. And starting off with ourselves, we really do need to continually be very alert to when ignorance is going on in our lives. We can't really do so much about it. I often think that if we can develop our practice and develop it, whereby we get up early in the morning and we really get stuck in to understanding what we're meant to do, then there's a good possibility we can stay in the mode of goodness and beyond, and then therefore we can act properly. But a lot of the times we cannot necessarily do that, so we're somewhat affected even throughout the day. But still, we should recognize it. We should really fight to be alert, and that way, in that way, then our humility will win out, because the humility is the currency that's necessary. Because otherwise, the false ego is the currency, and we're trying to dictate this and do this and enjoy this and see this and opine on this and opine on that. The false ego will just go on ad infinitum. But if we can be careful and be able to spot the false ego when it's manifesting, that will save ourselves from that ignorance. And then what will happen is that we'll get thoughts on how to serve the spiritual master and how to help spread the Krishna consciousness movement, and they will be enthusing, and then we'll understand that Krishna is in control. That was the point that we were talking with Tulsi Priya. Krishna is actually doing, this whole idea. I remember it was there at the beginning when I joined that, who wants to be the best devotee to take credit to, who's the best preacher, he did really well, and I'm not saying that was, I'm criticizing anybody else about that. It was our neophyteness was there, and but if we actually understand that Krishna is in control of this movement, and it's Krishna who's spreading the Krishna consciousness movement, we have to keep out of the way of that. Then amazing things will happen, because the association of devotees will be powerful, because we are all allowing Krishna in that sense, if you want to use it that way, to act through us, and all we're trying to do is to please the spiritual master and pleasing Krishna, and Krishna will come and tell us, as Prabhupada has said on numerous occasions, that the spiritual master can tell us, but also the super soul can come, and Krishna actually comes personally. In one famous discussion with a reporter, Prabhupada was said, and Krishna will tell me what to do, and I think His Grace Rameshwar Prabhu, the great servant of Prabhupada, said, Krishna, through the agency of, he was trying to kind of water it down a little bit to this reporter so the important could understand. But then Prabhupada says, no, Krishna tells me, tells me directly, But Krishna, Prabhupada always wanted to share that with his disciples. He wanted his devotees to know this. And in this particular section in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada is explaining how Krishna appears through the spiritual master, and Krishna appears directly. It's just an amazing section, and it's a great one to meditate on and to study. So thank you, Gulnara, for that. And what was the question, Shani?
Shrupa's question?
Yeah.
It's Hare Krishna, Manu Prabhu, please could you say a little more on the exact mindset needed, as it seems that to act correctly requires realization, which we understand to be a revelation. So if there's no revelation, how can we act properly?
Yeah, sure, but that's quite similar to the class or the question you asked the other time as well, and I think that it's really a sign that you're really on the button or on the money, as they say. This is the whole area that we need to be working in. It's about Krishna revealing to us, us practicing. How can we act on the platform of the self, who we really are, how we're servant of Krishna, but we're also there's a section later in that section where Prabhupada or the Narada explains that the Brahmin says that they're like two swans, two birds on the tree, and one is instructing the other. And so until that time that we realize we will be taking instruction, and that's what the parampara system is. Until then, we know then we can act in the spiritual world in our real identity. And we can do it even here. Jivan mukte hi jiva go swayameva sparatyadaha. This is where the instructions are coming from. How does it happen, and when does it happen? It's just a question of getting to know how to do it. It's like Prabhupada always talked about spiritual techniques, and it is natural. It is a natural thing. The good qualities naturally become apparent. They start to emanate from the devotee, and a devotee starts to feel happiness and peace. The devotee, I personally do it by studying those sections in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna explains the qualities that we should aspire for. I always find that that's very helpful. When I realize how off I am and how off I was and have, but at the same time, when I meditate on these verses, then actually that's what happens. You actually start to meditate, and somehow mystically, you almost feel as if that you're in that mindset. Although a little while later, when you suddenly pop out of it again and you see that you're still affected by the modes of nature, then it's not so good. But you actually relish the time when you were in that situation when Krishna is. That is what the revelation is actually. Krishna is revealing what the mindset is in that sense. Do you know what I mean? He's saying what it is. Now, we should always remain humble and as though we're a fool and that we don't know anything. We're just a completely selfish rascal. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has given us that mindset as well. How to become qualified and how to remain in that situation if we do ever get to it. Because we don't have to be trained how to be proud. We just are proud. We just have to take that as a given. That's why we're here in the material world, is because we're proud. We think that we're great. We think we're better than God, But we're in a ridiculously farcical situation to think like that. So that will help us develop that humility. Will help us maintain that humility, and then we'll become qualified to hear these messages, and the messages will take root in the heart, because Krishna's cleaning the heart, for us to accept those messages, and they become totally relevant to us, and they become like nourishment, and they become our life, and the instructions then of the spiritual master become our life. And I find that so exciting about the Krishna consciousness movement, in the fact that just by following the orders of the spiritual master, our life is a success, is a complete success. And it's exciting as well because there is some peace and happiness there. And then when we transmit that peace and happiness to others, and they experience that peace and happiness, there's no greater feeling. So our goal is to become just like transmitters of this parampara message. Like it or not, we're kind of there. We've been very fortunate to have the examples of some great souls. All these great devotees. I won't even name them, but all these great disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And we've been hearing them, more and more of late, and their amazing qualities, and we've been very lucky to be in their presence and to picked up how they have, what they think. We have to be very alert in the association of these devotees. Sometimes these samskars, just a moment's association, it can last a lifetime for us. I'm talking about things which happened 32 years ago. When Bhakti Maharaj was here, but there's we're just very, very fortunate to be able to pick up these things. We might not realize it at the time, but it's like when we leave, when we go to the holy dam and then we leave it, and we don't really, when we're there, we may not have the consciousness, but then the holy dam then appears to us then throughout, and we memorize things then. So it's like that with the association of these devotees as well. So that would be my answer. Just the association of devotees. We get into that mindset, and it happens. It's just by Krishna's mercy, and it is our natural position. So in that sense, we don't even need to struggle that hard anymore. You know, that's our natural situation, our natural position in relation with Krishna. Then that's why we can enjoy unlimitedly, because Krishna is within. He's acting through us. We've become somewhat qualified, and we don't think that we're qualified, but still Krishna manifests, and we see Krishna, and we understand it is not us. Okay, I hope that.
Do you have time for a quick question?
One quick question, yeah.
Gopalacharya Prabhu asks, how's humility defined?
Gopalacharya Prabhu, obeisances, glories to Prabhupada, glories to Bhakti Vikash Maharaj. How is humility defined? Oh, yeah. I suppose just very quickly, I'd really have to say that it is always just realizing how tiny we are in the whole scheme of things. Just that this body is here like that. It just comes and goes. Everything in relation to this body just comes and goes. And, you know, we're in this body. We took this stupid, mad turn to come into here, you know. And so I suppose it's always keeping that in the forefront, you know, mindful, remembering where we are and who we are, and then we should be safe, you know. So those two things. We took the wrong direction. We're here. This is a ridiculous situation, and also everything in relation with the body is here. It's gone. It's. So if we give it even an ounce of credibility, the false ego, then we're in la la land. You know, we're in a crazy situation. So sorry if that's not a great definition, but that's all I can do at the moment. Thank you very much, Prabhus. Have a great day in Krishna consciousness, and go and spread this movement. Fulfill the words of the previous acharyas. It's another opportunity to do it. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.